Somewhere in your house, there is a photograph of you from a time long before you could walk. Someone is holding you. You're looking at the camera, or maybe past it, and everyone in your family can tell you exactly where that photo was taken, what month it was, sometimes even what you were wearing under that blanket. But you cannot. You have no memory of that day at all. Not a fragment, not a feeling. It is simply gone, and it was never really yours to begin with. Every single person on earth shares this exact same gap, and almost no one stops to ask why. Think about your very first memory right now. How old were you in it? For most people, the answer lies somewhere between ages 3 and 4, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, but almost never before that. Why does this timeline of our lives begin at 3 or 4 years old and not at 0? Well, scientists have a name for this gap. It is called infantile amnesia, and the term itself is over a century old. Sigmund Freud was the first to give it a name, though his explanation for it, that children repress early memories out of unconscious conflict, has not held up well over modern research. Freud noticed this pattern correctly. However, he simply got the reason almost entirely wrong. So if it is not repression, what is actually happening inside a baby's brain? For decades, the leading assumption was simple. Babies just cannot form memories yet. The machinery is not built, but that explanation runs into an immediate problem because babies clearly do remember things. Show an infant the same mobile above their crib day after day, and they will kick their legs faster when they see it again. A clear sign of recognition. Babies can recognize their mother's voice, their mother's face, familiar routines, familiar rooms. Memory in some form is obviously working. Now, this is where a researcher named Carolyn Rovee-Collier changed the conversation. Rovee-Collier ran a now famous series of experiments using exactly that kind of mobile. She would tie a ribbon from an infant's ankle to a mobile hanging above the crib, so that kicking made the mobile move. Infants quickly learned the connection and started kicking to make it spin. Then, days or weeks later, she would bring the same infants back, hang the same mobile, but this time not attach the ribbon. If the baby remembered the connection, it would kick immediately, expecting the mobile to move. What she found was remarkable. Babies as young as 2 or even 3 months old could retain this memory for over a week. Older infants could hold on to it for even longer. This directly disproved the old idea that babies simply cannot form memories. They can. The real mystery, then, is not why babies fail to make memories. It is why those early memories made so reliably disappear so completely by the time we are old enough to look back and ask questions. To understand where those memories actually go, we need to look inside a very specific part of the brain. That part is called the hippocampus, and it functions similarly like a save button for our experience. It is the structure responsible for taking a moment happening right now and converting it into a memory you can retrieve later. Crucially, the hippocampus is still under construction for years after birth. It keeps developing new neurons and new connections well into early childhood. Now, this is where a scientist named Sheena Josselyn enters the story, along with her research partner Frankland. In a widely cited study, Josselyn and Frankland investigated something specific: neurogenesis, the ongoing birth of new neurons inside the hippocampus during early life. Their hypothesis was striking. What if the very process that helps a young brain grow is the same process that erases its earliest memories? Well, here's the logic. Picture the hippocampus as something like a corkboard, where each memory is a node pinned into a specific spot using a specific set of connections. Now imagine that during infancy and early childhood, new neurons are being generated so rapidly and being wired into that corkboard so aggressively that the new wiring physically overrides the old pins. The connections that stored an early memory get pulled apart and reused to build something else before that memory ever had a chance to become stable and permanent. Josselyn and Frankland tested this directly. They used mice and they either sped up or slowed down the rate of neurogenesis in young mice's brains. When they slowed the process down, the memories from that early developmental period lasted noticeably longer. When they sped up neurogenesis in adult mice's brains, memories that would normally last a long time began to fade far more quickly. This gave real experimental weight to a striking idea. The very construction process that builds a functional brain may be the same process demolishing its earliest records before they can ever be filed away for good. But neurogenesis is likely only part of the answer. There is a second piece to this puzzle, and it involves something you use every single day without noticing. Language. A researcher named Patricia Bauer has spent years studying how children begin to encode and later recall memories, and her work points to something essential. Memory does not just require a hippocampus that works. It requires a framework to organize experience into something retrievable, and one of the most powerful frameworks we have is language itself. Think about how you'd actually retrieve a memory as an adult. You often narrate it, even silently. You tell yourself a small story. This happened, then that happened, and it made me feel a certain way. That narrative structure is not just decoration. Rather, it is scaffolding. It is what allows a memory to be filed in a way that your future self can search for and pull back out. Now, a baby, before it has language, cannot build this scaffolding yet. The experience may register, sure. It may even shape behavior and emotion in subtle ways. But it cannot yet be organized into the kind of story-shaped memory that survives for decades. This explains something curious about how your earliest memories are structured, if you have any at all, from very early childhood. They tend to be fragments rather than full stories. A specific smell, a particular color of light in a room, a single sound, rarely a complete narrative with a clear beginning and end. That fragmentation is not a flaw in your memory. Rather, it is a fossil, a leftover trace from the exact period when your brain was collecting experiences faster than it could organize it into something a storytelling mind could later retrieve. There is something else worth noticing here, something that applies directly to how you talk with children in your own life. Researchers studying childhood memory, including Bauer and others working alongside her, have found that children whose parents talk with them in detail about shared experiences, asking questions, adding narrative structure, filling in the who, what, and why of an event, tend to retain memories from earlier ages than children whose parents do not engage in that kind of conversational reminiscing. The story you help a child build around an experience appears to directly affect whether that experience survives into their adult memory at all. Consider what this means about your own earliest memory, the one you thought of a few minutes ago. It is probably not a real, raw, isolated capture of that exact moment happening in isolation. It is more likely a memory that was told, retold, reinforced through family conversation, maybe even shaped slightly different each time it was retold, until it stabilized into the version you now carry. Some psychologists have found that a portion of people's earliest reported memories do not even match the actual timeline of events in their life, suggesting some early memories may be partially reconstructed from photographs or family stories rather than pulled directly from lived experience. None of this means your earliest memories are false or meaningless. It means memory itself, especially early memory, is less like a video recording sitting untouched in a vault and more like something actively built, rebuilt, and organized well after the moment it describes has already passed. There is a third angle to this story worth exploring as well, one that goes beyond neurogenesis and language, into how attention itself works in a very young brain. You see, infants and toddlers experience the world with almost no ability to filter what matters from what does not. An adult walking into a room automatically ignores the hum of the refrigerator, the pattern on the wallpaper, the exact angle of light through the window, and focuses instead on the one or two things that actually matter: a conversation, a task, or maybe taxes. A baby cannot do this yet. Everything arrives at roughly the same volume. Every sound, every texture, every flicker of movement competes for attention all at once. This matters enormously for memory because forming a stable, retrievable memory depends heavily on that filtering process. Without it, an early experience is not encoded as a clean, organized moment. It is encoded as an undifferentiated flood, dozens of competing sensations with no clear hierarchy, telling the brain which parts were actually important. Even if some trace of that flood gets stored, it is nearly impossible to later locate and pull back out because it was never filed under anything specific to begin with. It is less like a missing book and more like a warehouse where nothing was ever labeled or shelved. Now think about how this connects back to the hippocampus itself. The hippocampus does more than simply store memories. It also plays a critical role in binding separate pieces of an experience together. The sight, the sound, the smell, the emotional tone into a single retrievable unit. That binding process depends on connections that, as Josselyn and Frankland's research suggests, are being actively rewired and repurposed during the exact years when a baby is having its earliest experiences. A memory might get partially bound. It might get encoded in fragments that were never properly stitched together. And a memory that was never fully stitched together in the first place has very little chance of surviving decades of ordinary neural turnover. Consider, too, what this reveals about a phenomenon almost everyone has experienced firsthand. A childhood photograph gets shown to you enough times, a family story gets repeated at enough dinners, and eventually you feel as though you remember the event itself, vividly, in first person, complete with details that feel like your own perception. Yet psychologists studying autobiographical memory have found that some of these vivid early memories do not line up with when the event actually occurred, or contain details the person could not possibly have perceived from where they were standing at that time. This is not lying, and it is not a flaw unique to certain people. It is simply what happens when a story gets built around a real event using outside information, and that reconstructed story eventually becomes indistinguishable from the inside, from a memory generated by direct experience. This raises an interesting question about identity itself. If your earliest sense of your own life story is partly built from photographs, partly built from family retellings, and only partly, if at all, built from raw personal recall, then the story you tell about who you were as a child is, in a very real sense, a collaborative project between your brain and the people who raised you. That is not a diminishment of memory. If anything, it reveals how deeply social memory formation even is, even at the most personal, individual level of a single human life. So the next time you look at a photograph of yourself as an infant, being held by someone who remembers that day in perfect detail, while you remember nothing at all, you are not looking at a failure of your mind. You are rather looking at evidence of exactly how your mind was being built in that moment. A hippocampus under rapid construction, a language system not yet online, a storytelling machine still being wired to get one connection at a time. Somewhere in your house, there is a photograph of you before you could walk, and now you finally understand why that day belongs only to the people who were there to tell you about it.